Hello and welcome to Varsity Blue. Alex Bersad alongside David now is making his first appearance on Varsity Blue, first on WOLV as well, am I correct? All right, rookie experience here. And then, of course, the grizzled veteran Scott Wagner on the right side of your screen. And, well, Michigan certainly looked like grizzled veterans against Delaware State this past weekend. We'll take a look at the highlights in a second, but is this a good reason, David, not to have a 12th game on the regular season schedule?
Well, it certainly is, because you see that the competition level really bad with Delaware State, and we get to third and fourth string quarterbacks. I mean, I love David Cohn, I really do, but don't really want to see him on the field all that much. So that does it for me.
David Cohn now the highest rated passer on Michigan's roster. Should David Cohn start against Penn State next weekend, Scott?
No, he should not.
Okay, well, we settled that quarterback controversy. Whether or not Nick Sheridan should start is a different matter. Let's take a look at the highlights from Delaware State. We'll keep them brief. It's just ugly, folks. There's Denard Robinson. Tate Forestier started the game, only played one possession, got that touchdown. And then here's Vincent Smith, about an 8-yard run for a touchdown right there. His first of his career. Insert comparisons to Michael Hart here. We've heard him. And then a punt block and punter destroyed. Double jeopardy, as Michael Scott would say. Two things in one right there. Brandon Graham scores a touchdown, 21-0 Michigan at that point. Little beamer ball for you. And Denard Robinson, 2 touchdown passes on 4 attempts. Neither of them real pretty. Right there finding Kelvin Grady, making it 28-0 Michigan, still in the first quarter. But he threw behind him, and then similar pass here to Martell Webb off the back foot. He throws it about 5 yards behind Webb, but it doesn't matter. It's Delaware State. 42-0 after that play. This was just embarrassing for both sides, guys. 49-3 at the half. And I'll take a look at the stats. It's just over 700 yards of offense for Michigan. It was just an ugly, ugly game, guys. And let's start with the most obvious question. Did we learn anything, Scott?
I didn't learn anything. The only thing I learned had to do with Delaware State. Delaware State is just not good enough to be playing in the big house in front of 110,000 people. Michigan, every time they got the ball, they pushed Delaware State's defensive line at least 3 yards. So as a default, the running backs were getting 3 yards a carry. You're not going to learn anything. You're not going to see whether the running backs are seeing the holes. You're not going to see how good the offensive line is, because they're just so physically overpowering. So really, you just can't take anything away from this game as far as I'm concerned.
And of course, over 700 yards of offense, David, a Michigan record. But there's nothing to learn from this, right? Can you take away anything? Delaware State didn't even start their starting quarterback. He was injured.
I think all you can take away from this is that, the Michigan athletic department, you see, they're trying to find that happy medium. So that now they're 1-1 against, FCS teams. And they got to find that happy medium when you're going to schedule that 1AA opponent. And obviously we haven't found it so far.
Somewhere in between App State and Delaware State, I guess. And of course, Delaware State's lost their 2 games in the previous 2 years against Division I teams. I'm calling it Division I and Division I AA just because it makes so much more sense. It's against Akron, teams with vast losing records over the past couple of years, and they lost handily to Akron both those times. Now, one interesting thing that did come out of today's press conference was that David Molk is actually going to practice with the team, David, here this upcoming week, perhaps even playing this Saturday against Penn State. Talk about the effect that a healthy David Molk would have on this team.
Well, I think, as you see, when Michigan plays good teams, it has a huge effect on the run game. And when you play a team like Delaware State, it really doesn't make that huge of a difference. But when you play a team like, say, Michigan State, or this week Penn State, upcoming games against Wisconsin and Ohio State, that's going to make a huge difference. And they really need that presence on the front line to give Brandon Miner, and all the other backs those holes that they really need.
Carlos Brown is still like the 4th leading rusher in the Big Ten, despite having not played a couple weeks because of injury, Scott. But David Molk would be a huge addition.
Oh, I mean, let's look back to what happened in the Western Michigan game and the Notre Dame game. Just seeing the way that the line was able to control the line of scrimmage and really open up big holes for running backs. And then look what happened against Indiana and against Michigan State and see what happened. And you can tell that there's a much bigger difference when David Molk is playing center compared to when David Moosman is playing center and Perry Dorsey has to play guard. So if he could play against Penn State, that would be huge. It'd be amazing coming off his injury, but it would definitely be a huge boon to this Michigan team.
All right, then, of course, we have this pattern of not learning anything, but we did get to see Denard Robinson for an extended period of time in this game, guys. And Scott, he's 3 for 4 with 2 touchdowns. So that certainly looks good. But let's talk about these touchdown passes. Of course, we'll see a lot of highlights of him here running around. But do you trust Denard Robinson anymore throwing the football?
I mean, I trust Denard Robinson to throw 5-yard out routes to wide open receivers as he did so well in the Iowa game. But I don't trust him to throw these 30-yard bombs down the field as he did against Iowa. The one thing I do trust him, though, to do, as you'll see in this highlight, is just be ridiculously fast running past people. So there's a spot for him in this offense, but the spot for him in this offense is not throwing 30-yard bombs. It's using the run to set up short passes like these 10-yard routes, where the secondary has to come in and be afraid of the run, and then he can get off those short passes. But when you're trying to open up the playbook too much with him, it gets a little dicey.
Yeah, we saw every time Denard is thrown downfield, minus this Delaware State game, David, he's been intercepted, actually.
Correct.
So, Tate Forsay is obviously the man, but what role would you like to see Denard Robinson have as the season progresses?
Well, my trust level would be in Denard Robinson going to Coach Rodriguez and saying, hey, Coach, I don't want to play quarterback anymore. I want to move to running back. I want to move to slot receiver. Just some role that we can use him. And in that capacity, Michigan, has that threat that all those teams that win national championships have. And it'd be really nice to see Denard Robinson moved around the field, not so much at quarterback, because I think, as he's proven, at least this year, he's not going to be a quarterback.
Well, certainly Michigan hamstrung by a lack of quarterback depth, and that's why Denard is staying in that spot. And Devin Gardner, 5-star, everything, perhaps best overall quarterback recruit this upcoming recruiting class, is already committed to Michigan. Hopefully he'll stick with that commitment. We've had other Shavadrik Beavers in the past, and hopefully there'll be a little more quarterback depth there for Denard to be able to move to a playmaking Percy Harvin type role. We have to go to commercial break, but we're going to come back. We're going to talk about Ohio State and some difficulties they had with Purdue. Welcome back to Varsity Blue. Alex Prasad, David Nowes, and Scott Wagner, and Ohio State. It was not quite the weekend of, the Notre Dame weekend for Michigan fans in terms of a big win at home and an Ohio State loss. But watching Ohio State lose to Purdue was certainly shocking. More shocking is the foresight that Scott Wagner had, calling Ohio State not a very good team. Well, we'll look at that in a second. But let's first take a look at the Big Ten standings. You see Purdue beating Ohio State, number 7 Ohio State, of course already with the one loss to USC at home, 26-18 in West Lafayette. Iowa playing a less talented clone of themselves, as Peter Saul would say, beating Wisconsin 20-10. And then you take a look at the standings. Iowa obviously in the driver's seat for the Big Ten guys. But let's first start with Ohio State. Are you surprised, David, that Ohio State dropped this game to Purdue, a Purdue team that had only won one game previous to this big Ohio State win?
I'm a little surprised that the game that they lost was to Purdue, but I'm not surprised at all that they lost. The thing you have to look at is Terrell Pryor is absolutely atrocious throwing the football. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And when Purdue can throw the ball 50 times on the Ohio State defense, that has to bring into question their passing defense a little bit to you. And it gives me a few worries about, the Michigan-Purdue game. But Michigan-Ohio State's looking a lot better for Michigan fans right now.